Good afternoon, everyone. The satellite city of the Chernobyl nuclear, Slavutich held an event, during which they discussed the acclaimed Chernobyl series. I managed to film for you some episodes of this meeting, Anne. So today I'm going to show you what the employees think about the show, the workers at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, the liquidators of the consequences of the accident and eyewitnesses of this tragedy.
The film as a whole tells a true story step by step. Those who watch it say, yeah, those guys got it. What do you think is the moral and ethical aspect of this film? I mean, a lot of people, almost all of them. With a few exceptions, the characters are named with real people's names. And often, some of them have been made as anti-heroes, as villains. And people. Some of them are still alive, they're still living in our society. In the film, Brukhanov and Fomin were made into careerists. In fact, they're completely different people. Brukhanov is the first director of the station who came in the 70s, and that's why, in this case, this is a big bend. As far as Dyatlov is concerned, he was a tough guy. In fact, and I agree with Nikolai Stemberg, who said this: if anyone at that moment had been in the control room, who would have been in the control room? Moment was in the control room, who had the authority, at least equal to him, he could have changed history. I was hired by Dyatlov to work in the reactor shop. I was in his private office before I was hired. It was 81, and I knew that he was a very stern man. He was very hard to change his mind, because he felt like a specialist, but that's what led to the separation. Another episode that I clearly know from the experience of the USSR and my own life, that if any of the participants in this experiment had refused to do it, or would have opposed it, the personnel department would immediately be given his employment. The personnel department, and he would never even get a job as a janitor. A career as an engineer of reactor control would have been like this. Dyatlov and I had been family friends for a long time. To me, when the diners, they start to roofie, I can't watch it. Would you tell me what he was like?
He was the coolest. He was stern, he could swear, but only for the cause. But when we were in the situation room, in the control room, he'd say to us, "Girls, come on out." Or so he would do. And we would come out because there was normal man-to-man talk. There was discipline. That's for sure. Everybody respected him and feared him because we be late or something. Well, they respected him. There was a reason for that. He was a normal, great guy, a specialist. That's all. A professional with a capital letter.
And now we come to the question. If the movie, fiction, why are the names real? I don't know why they were so unethical, but to family and friends, they just ignored that there are wives and sons, and they're being shown that their father and husband was so abusive. Who did the accident? Did in the movie? Dyatlov. No one else. He is the only one to blame. And they changed the name of the cigarettes. It's a trifle, isn't it? Not Stolichnaya but Sakanskaya. Because there will be lawsuits. The Chief Justice of the court, a member of the Supreme Court, they changed their name too. And why? Because he's a lawyer and he's theirs, damn it. And Dyatlov, Fomin what? It's like they don't, and the relatives, they'll just swallow the whole thing and that's it. They're just all going to keep quiet. I, for one, would have been hurt as a son to see my father so unflattering when I know that he's not really like that. So if you're making a feature film, there's no question. Based on a true story? No questions asked. You want to Change the story, present it with your own eyes? No questions asked. Change the names. Change the names. There won't be much credibility. Here's the key. Approach. To make dough, you have to make it credible, or rather, as if credible. Give credibility to the film. That's why there will be ratings, there will be screenings. And the fact that it's not true, fuck it. There are bits in there that I don't agree with. Let's put it this way. The same firemen actually showed up on their own. No one called them in. They just went out for a smoke and the block collapsed. They jumped in the car and ran. They didn't run from the row in the auto show where the breakdown, but they came from the side of the turbine room, row A, and connected the dry pipes, which is. So it's a system that allows, shall we say, water through the dry pipes on the marshal's roof. And I tell a lot of tourists the story, and I tell them what the fire department did. 800 meters is the turbine hall. Under each turbine hall, 8 turbines. Each turbine 400 cubic meters of hydrogen. Each turbine contains 80 tons of oil. If that roof had caught fire and collapsed, there would have been a colossal, I don't know what it was, but would have lost own needs, shall we say, and so on. Third, first, second reactors could have easily left without a cooling system and everything else. That's when half of Europe would be gone for sure. According to the reasons for the accident, if we're talking about those, the reasons for the accident that were given in the show, the fact that Legasov is on trial with the cards, they have nothing to do with the truth. What is written in the official version of the IAEA about the rise in power doesn't say a word at all. It was not a violation and no indication. Of course, Dyatlov did not give any instructions to raise the power because it was not a violation. That's okay, that's the thing. The thing is, at first, when I started looking, I couldn't figure out what it reminded me of. Then I figured it out. This is 80% of Grigory Ustinovich Medvedev's book, The Chernobyl Notebook, from '89, with all the names that are listed there with the sequence of actions. Everything that is written there, this series, is perfectly based on that book. Reality it has as much to do with reality as it does to this book. That is, what bloopers and deliberate lies Medvedev wrote in the book to order. Clearly by order. To denigrate Dyatlov, to denigrate the personnel of Chernobyl NPP. I mean, this was written in '89 with one and the same purpose. All this is shown in the show. Actually, it's a general evil parody of the Soviet Union. It's an exaggerated Greats K. The reality is there, of course. I see. But everything is in an exaggerated form. The very colors of the film, the pseudo-documentary. And it's really not claimed to be a feature film, just like the book is stated not as a work of fiction, but a documentary work, with real names, with a real, as it were, sequence of actions. The causes of the accident and the chronology is in many ways not the same as it was in reality. Do you think the actions of the staff are depicted correctly in the series? No, of course not. I was shocked. They showed they left a wounded comrade in the hallway. No, that didn't happen. Or they blamed each other. The whole situation on the block, as a blocker, I say, is unrealistically portrayed. It never happened. Ever happened, not in my day, not back then. And what is the target audience of the show that was filmed? I mean, who were they? Were they making the show for? Every movie, any product has an audience. They're doing it for someone. For young people. I mean, here's where I agree with you. So they've made, as I understand it, for Western viewers who have no idea at all what the Soviet Union is. They have their own stereotypes about the regime that existed. Looking ahead, I'd like to say that I'm not nostalgic about that regime. It was actually a communist regime. There were good sides to it, of course, the bad sides. But the Western viewer has his own stereotype: vodka, balalaika, bears. No balalaika, no bears, vodka from the first frame. It was a dry law then. In the camp of partisan soldiers unloading crates of vodka. Well, I haven't seen anything like that. There was no such thing, prohibition. Yes, of course there were elements. When the soldiers were running around the village for moonshine, they were drinking. But according to the film, it turns out that they were liquidated at gunpoint out of fear and drunk. Always the main sign. Divers, right? The three came out. What did they get their hands on? A bottle of vodka. Guys, class, well done. Go on, drink to your health. Creator's chronology of elimination put upside down in general. Where exactly? Tell me, please, when did we have Legasov's report at the IAEA? At the IAEA? The report was sometime in August. At the end of August. And he says in the film that there will be an IAEA report in December. There are a lot of inconsistencies. That there's going to be an IAEA report. There are a lot of inconsistencies in December. I think it's been staged and turned around. The same helicopter, yeah, they say to me, well, they couldn't have shown it in October. Guys, they showed the clearing of the roofs normally in October? It was okay. Were Legasov and Sherbina at the trial? No, of course not. Ha, and the whole 5th episode is based on them being in court. That's fiction. It's very fiction. It's fantasy. But what Legasov says is what he came to before he died. And the trial was earlier. As for Sherbina, I know him well enough, so he looks a bit idealized here. He was tougher. At that time there was no other way. It is clear that Sherbin and Legasov are only one strand of the company that was managing the accident response process. Because I think so, if there was no Soviet Union, Ukraine itself, God forbid, simply would not have been able to cope with it, with what the Soviet Union did. Ukraine. Second, so for the residents of Pripyat and purely social issues. That everybody got housing, everybody got compensation, shall we say. And many, many other things. So in this case, the socialist system of the Soviet Union worked. As it is. There are bloopers in another way. It shows the guys who were looking there for the same. Kudryavtsev, Paravochenko, and so on, that they are there in the blood there and so on. In fact, it's like the first moments nobody was that red, etc. Yeah, there was this, radiation tanning, but that was already happening at the 6th hospital, because it shows up after their 4 or 5 or 6 days. Because those people who went into the hospital, let's say at 4 p.m. on the 26th, there was already a team from of the 6th Clinical Hospital in our medical unit in the city of Pripyat. And they were selecting people that had to be taken to the 6th hospital. There were 134 of them. There were 2 Tu-134s, which were then thrown away, the cabins of those planes. They did, let's say, it's shown differently. It wasn't like that a little bit. In fact, the system that has been in place since 1949 for the 6th Clinical Hospital, it worked. That is, people were sorted, they were told this, that, and that. With the exception of Lelachenko, who already had this condition, he also got a lot, not less than the fireman. He was already dying here in Ukraine, I don't remember, in the 27th hospital or in the 25th. In the 25th, yes. On the whole, yes, it was such a spiral of memories. I, for example, watched 4 episodes at once, lying on the couch. At night when I slept, I had all these events replayed in my head as if they had happened yesterday. Because we were 32 years old, 2 kids, and that's it, you start a new life all over again. No, I agree. And also on the Soviet system, such a totalitarian, brutal system, they show miners who go in there not doing shit there. He's got a pack of cigarettes there, he's like a thug. He puts it in his pocket, he's the master of the situation. But he still agrees and goes and does what he's asked. So my question is, who raised him to be like this? What school did he go to? Who made him that kind of person, who was explained to him? But in the film it's not like that. In the film, they are driven at gunpoint to do their duty. No, there were no miners and no machine guns. What do you mean there were no miners? The minister arrived accompanied by submachine gunners. Can you imagine a minister in the Soviet Union? To go to some mine in Tula, can you? So they went why? Because they're Soviet people, and they didn't go at gunpoint, not out of fear of being driven or hijacked. They went because they were Soviet people, they went to help. And save exactly the same Soviet people. And that's the very Soviet system that's being scorned in the film. It was exaggerated with the machine gunners. And about the undressing, isn't it exaggerated? Is that a normal artistic device? Were they stripped to the waist? Excuse me, they're shining their balls in there. Oh, that didn't happen. We have to emphasize their heroism. The few who know and who have witnessed, who have studied this story, but as a percentage of those who watched this film, were a thin layer. We look at it critically and can assess what is true or untrue. My point is that everyone else takes it to be true. They looked at it, ate it all up, and moved on.
In conclusion, I want to tell you about one statement that happened at the very end of this meeting, which, unfortunately, I was not able to film. The thing is that this event was attended by a Dutch journalist who has long been studying the USSR. He was interested in everything that people say, and when he was already at the very end, he was perplexed. He said that when he himself, watching this show, he couldn't sleep well for several nights. He was so impressed by everything he saw. And here in this room, it turns out, people are sitting there, calmly discussing very scary things that they've witnessed, and they're often even smiling. And this journalist said the following phrase: either you know something that I do not know, or you are very strong people. You see, in my line of work I often communicate with the liquidators of the Chernobyl accident, with eyewitnesses of this tragedy, and it's clear that they are very strong people who have been able to live through all of this. And they definitely know more than you or I. And that's why, of course, they look at this series, they look at, let's say in any case, critically. But at the same time, in the course of this discussion, which took place in Slavutich, everyone came to the unequivocal conclusion that as a work of art, it's a very emotional, intense, quality drama, which allows the whole world to be reminded of the problems of Chernobyl, the problems of exploitation of such objects, and ecological problems in general. But the main complaint of all the liquidators of the consequences of the accident from the eyewitnesses is that the main characters of this show are named after real people. You must agree that this is unethical in any case, just as it is unethical to make some of them overt anti-heroes. I understand that in every work of fiction there must be a hero and an anti-hero, but it's unethical to make a real person who's often still alive, or his descendants and children, and how is he now after all this? Well, honestly, this is the question that the creators of the show had to consider very anxiously. And that's probably why some people from Chernobyl, I've read about this on the forums where the series was discussed, are planning to sue HBO for moral damages. So that's the way it is. I'm leaving for today until we meet again. Bye everybody.